Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. For Radha Gopinath, please. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for joining this morning for Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita session. Happy Ekadashi to everyone. We have Her Grace Vrindavaneshwari Mataji, who will take over this session now. Mataji, if you would like, you can start now. You can unmute yourself. Hare Krishna, Vrindavaneshwari
Hare Krishna, sorry,
I'm
so sorry. 1 second, I'm just having a little bit of an issue here.
No problem.
1 second. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Okay. So sorry, everyone. Here we are. Good morning. Let me turn my video on. Let's get ourselves the rainy day here in Philadelphia. All kinds of things. So we'll just jump in. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Astutari Sattva's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Astutari Sattva's Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadar Shiva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Gita Govardhan Ki Jai Maya Pradam Ki Jai Vrindavadam Ki Jai Jamuna Devi Ki Jai Ganga Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai ISKCON Harrisburg Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Bol All glories, assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, Hare Hare Bol. Good morning, everyone. Happy Ekadasi. Happy appearance, fasting for the appearance of Lord Varaha. Tomorrow's the actual appearance day. So, hope you're all having a lovely rainy day wherever you're at. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Devam Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Daya Madhiraya Nastaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So this morning we have a few verses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just read the Sanskrit and translation for the verses until we get to 74. Which has the translation, and then we can all take turns reciting that one together. So I'm going to just go through these. Okay. Sabba avatarera kari samayanya lakshana taramadya krishna chandraya karila ganana. The Bhagavatam describes the symptoms and deeds of the incarnations in general and counts Sri Krishna among them. Oops. Just use on your screen. Mine's getting a little slow here. Okay. Oops, there we go. Okay. Tabe sutta goshani mane pane bada bayaya yare yaraye lakshana taha karila nishaya. This made Sutta Goswami greatly apprehensive. Therefore, he distinguished each incarnation by its specific symptoms. Avatara Shaba Purushara Kala Amcha Swayam Bhagavan Krishna Sarva Avatamsha. All the incarnations of Godhead are plenary portions or parts of the plenary portions of the Purusha avatars. But the primeval Lord is Sri Krishna. He is the supreme personality of Godhead, the fountainhead of all incarnations. Purva Pakshi Kahe Tamara Bale Tabi Vakyana Paravyoma Narayana Swayam Bhagavan. An opponent may say, this is your interpretation, but actually the Supreme Lord is Narayan, who is in the transcendental realm. Tenha Shri Krishna Rupe Karina Avatar E Artha Shloke Dekhe Ki Ara Vikara. He, Narayan, incarnates as Lord Krishna. This is the meaning of the verse as I see it. There is no need for further consideration. Tarikahe kene karakutar kanumana shastra virudartha kuba nahaya pramana. To such a misguided interpreter, we may reply, why should you suggest such fallacious logic? An interpretation is never accepted as evidence if it opposes the principles of scripture. So this one we can do together, and it's also Sanskrit, which Anuvadam anukvatu navidyayam udirayat nahi alabdyab spadam kinchit kutrachit pratitishtati. Anuvadam anutvatu navidyam udirayat nahi alabdyad spadam kinchit kutrachit pratitishtati. Anuvadam anuktvatu navidyam udarayat nahi alabhyaspanam kinchit kutrachit pratishtati. Okay, would anyone else like to repeat?
Anuvadam anukvatu navidyam udirayat Nahyala. Okay. Nahyabdaspadam kinchit kutrachit patitishtati. Hare Krishna.
Okay, anyone else?
Anuvadam anuktvatu navideyamudirayet nahya labdaspadam kinchit kutrachit pratitishtati. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Would anyone else like to give it a try?
Anuvadam anuktva na vidhyem udirayet nahi alabd aspadam kinchit kutrachit pratishtati.
Okay, great. This one was a little bit of a mouthful here. So I'll go into the translation and the purport on this then. One should not state a predicate before its subject, for it cannot thus stand without proper support. The purport is this rhetorical rule appears in the Kadasi Tattva, 13th canto, in connection with the metaphorical use of words. An unknown object should not be put before the known subject because the object has no meaning if the subject is not first given. Om Jnana Tamaranja Shyakananjana Shalakaya Takshir Umlitamyena Taspe Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadadis Vadpadantikam Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasai Putule Shrimati Bhakti Charu Swamanitina Mani Snake to Cheta Supernata Vatmanam Charasa Plutam Prabhupada Kata Prananam Bhakti Charu Padam. So here we are, Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this section of Adi-Lila is really giving evidence of the different incarnations and how Krishna's expansions present. Now, a little bit of a grammar lesson here, right? So what is the predicate and the subject? And I actually had to look this up because it's been so long since high school English class when I was actually thinking about predicates and subjects. And I was like, oh yeah, now I remember.
Vrindavanji, I had to ask my husband like literally like 2 minutes ago because he's good in grammar. I'm like, I never got it in high school too. So I said, explain it to me.
Yeah, I was like, I need a refresher on this. Like especially because I'm talking about it today. So, and in verse 7, right? So in verse 7 of Adi-Lila, it's the predicate. It says the predicate always follows its subject. Now I shall explain the meaning of this verse according to the revealed scriptures. So this is used twice here in this section. And, high school English grammar aside, what we're really talking about here is the subject as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the subject of the expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the predicate is the the description, right? So, there's various examples of, the subject. We can say, Prabhupada, the subject, is an exalted devotee of Lord Krishna, right? So Prabhupada is the subject, the exalted devotee of Lord Krishna is the predicate, it's a descriptor, right? And here it's saying that we can't state the predicate before its subject. So if we just said an exalted devotee of Krishna, right? Who are we talking about? What's that mean? And so here we're talking about, if we're talking about just loosely kind of this understanding of what is Purusha, what are the expansions? Who's God, right? We're explaining, if we just say the supreme ruler of all this, or the Lord of the universe, what this is saying is that we can't put this in without proper support, because the verse prior to that is really giving an example of what someone might say in response to the fact that Lord Krishna is an expansion, or that Narayan is an expansion of Lord Krishna. And that this is kind of the argument that's being discussed, right, in this section of Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's really trying to establish who is who, right? And, in this tradition, there's a lot of names. There's a lot of kind of, and depending on who you talk to, if it's a Vaishnava, you're going to get one response. If you're talking to a Mayava, that you're going to get a different response. And so, here, how do you know? And verse 7 of Adi-Lila supports that by saying, and if it's not, it has to be according to scripture. You have to, all of this has to be according to the scripture. You can't just make it up. And this is actually verse 73 says, an interpretation is never accepted as evidence if it opposes the principles of scripture. So we have to look very closely and very carefully to understand what is being discussed here. And it's a complex subject that I have no qualification to even be discussing today, but I'm going to do my best because in the mood of serving Srila Prabhupada, we discuss these things together. So I'm here to kind of discuss with you my understandings of this section, because it's a very complex topic, because God is complex, and understanding the names of God is complex. And so it goes without saying that my qualifications are quite pale, because God is beyond my conception. He is eternal. So here we are trying to understand God's expansions, right? So even more complicated, even more beyond our ability from the material conception of life to be able to really wrap our heads around it, or at least for me, to be able to wrap our heads around it. So what we have to do is we have to go through the revealed scriptures. So what are revealed scriptures? Well, the revealed scriptures are the scriptures that were brought down. They are revealed scriptures, or scriptures that were revealed, right? That there's some sort of, there's a connection to Parampara, there's connection to God that brought this information down, that was revealed by God. So we have to go through that lineage to at least provide some evidence and see a consistent string, a consistent theme through all of the different Shastra. And Prabhupada is very expert, very, very expert at bringing in the Shastra to provide evidence, not just from Bhagavad Gita, not just from the Srimad Bhagavatam, but he brings it in from a lot of different, Shastra that are available, that are, not even all of them are completely translated. So he's bringing in Shastra that he's supporting this, to say, this is Shastra says here, and it says it here, and it says it here too. So it's not just one place. And so what we're talking about here is, we're really, I always like to say, like, we kind of peel the curtain back and we're saying, what's the real discussion here? Like, what are we really trying to establish here? Well, we're trying to establish who's God, right? Who's God? Who are his incarnations? And who are his expansions? Why is that important? Well, for a lot of us in the West, we just know God, right? There aren't other expansions that we know of. We don't have deities. We don't have the different levels of demigods. So for us, it's kind of black and white. Like there's some angels, archangels, but other than that, we keep it pretty basic here in the West with Christianity. But when you start getting into the Hindu religions, there's a lot of different views on who's who. Constantly you hear like, oh, well, Shiva's God. Shiva's the top, Krishna's the top. Well, no, it's only Vishnu. It's Narayan. No, it's Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is the original, that's the creator. And so it can be very confusing, especially for someone coming in, from any background really, but someone coming from a Western background, they're like, well, what do I believe? Like, who do I listen to? And then someone coming in from a Hindu background, it's going to be, well, I grew up learning this, or, my understanding is this. So how do we parse this out? How do we interpret this? And so, the purpose, of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is really to glorify Lord Chaitanya, to take his teachings and put them into words. And also part of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, because Lord Chaitanya, this is coming, these are the teachings from him that are being passed into the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He had the best understanding. Why? Well, he's an incarnation of God. So we can take this to be authority because it's being written by one of Lord Chaitanya's followers, that was within that time frame, at least closely, that this is something that we should take seriously. So now there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of contradiction in Shastra that we might hear, like in Shastra, or they hear that. So Prabhupada and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, here it's trying to make it very clear. This is how it is. Okay. So with all of that kind of preface to today's class, I wanted to kind of dive in a little bit to some of these concepts. So Prabhupada takes us, if you go to Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Prabhupada, in his purport very nicely describes kind of some of these concepts. And I wanted to take some time to read that purport because I think it really nicely goes into some of these explanations. The translation, I'll just read the translation for 10.8. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So in the purport, Prabhupada really gives some nectar here and some understanding about how we understand all of these. Who, you know, when Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is saying, I'm the source of all spiritual and material worlds, everything emanates from me. He's an authority. He's God. He's saying, look, listen to me. I know how the system's set up. I set it up, right? You know, I'm going to tell you who's in charge. You know, like I'm giving you this information. I'm telling you who's in charge. I'm telling you the order of things to just keep. And so Prabhupada goes into the purport to give us some more understanding of that. A learned scholar who has studied the Vedas perfectly and has information from authorities like Lord Chaitanya, and who knows how to apply these teachings, can understand that Krishna is the origin of everything in both the material and spiritual worlds. And because he knows this perfectly, he becomes firmly fixed in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. He can never be deviated by any amount of nonsensical commentaries or by fools. All Vedic literature agrees that Krishna is the source of Brahma, Shiva, and all other demigods. In the Atharva Veda, the Gopala Tapani Upanishad 124, it is said that Yo Brahmanan Vidadati Purvam Yo Vai Vedam Cha Gapayati Sma Krishnaya. The translation for that is, it was Krishna who in the beginning instructed Brahma in Vedic knowledge, and who disseminated Vedic knowledge in the past. Then again, in the Narayan Upanishad, says, Atha Purushu Hai Ve Narayano Kamayata Prajaye Shrejati. And the translation for that is, then the Supreme Personality Narayan desired to create living entities. So the Upanishad continues, Narayanad Brahma Jayate, Narayanad Prajapati Prajayate. Narayanad Indro Jayate, Narayanad Ashto Vasayovo Jayante, Narayanad Akadasa Rudra Jayante, Narayanad Dvayadad Sadaditya. From Narayan, the translation is, from Narayan, Brahma is born. And from Narayan, the patriarchs are also born. From Narayan, Indra is born. From Narayan, the 8 Vasus are born. From Narayan, the 11 Rudras are born. From Narayan, the 12 Adityas are born. This Narayan is an expansion of Krishna. Okay, so continuing on with this understanding of who's who, it is said in the same Vedas, Brahmanyo Devaki Putra, the son of Devaki, Krishna, is the supreme personality of Godhead, and that's in the Narayan Upanishad. Then it is said, Eko vai Narayana asin na Brahma neshano na po nagani samos nema dvaya aprithivi na nakshatrani na surya. The current translation is, in the beginning of the creation, there was only the Supreme Personality, Narayan. There was no Brahma, no Shiva, no water, no fire, no moon, no heaven and earth, no stars in the sky, no sun. And that's the Maha Upanishad. In the Maha Upanishad, it also says that Lord Shiva was born from the forehead of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the Vedas say that it is the Supreme Lord, the creator of Brahma and Shiva, who is to be worshipped. So continuing on, the Moksha Dharma section of Mahabharata, Krishna says, Prajapatim charudra kapi aham eva srajami ve tauhi mam na vijanito mam maya vimohito. The translation is, the patriarch Shiva and others are created by me, though they do not know that they are created by me because they are deluded by my illusory energy. In the Varaha Purana, which is appropriate for today. Oh no, yeah. So it is also said, Narayana Paradevas, Tashmaj Jata Chaturmukha, Tashmad Rudra Baba Deva, Sacha Sarva Gyanatam Gata. Narayan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and from him Brahman was born, from whom Shiva was born. Lord Krishna is the source of all generations, and he is called the most efficient cause of everything. He says, because everything is born of me, I am the original source of all. Everything is under me, no one is above me. Therefore, there is no supreme controller other than Krishna. One who understands Krishna in such a way from a bona fide spiritual master with reference from Vedic literature engages all his energy in Krishna consciousness, and becomes a truly learned man. In comparison to him, all others who did not know Krishna properly are but fools. Only a fool would consider Krishna to be an ordinary man. A Krishna conscious person should not be bewildered by fools. He should avoid all unauthorized commentary and interpretations on Bhagavad Gita and proceed in Krishna consciousness with determination and firmness. So that was a lot, I know, but I Prabhupada really takes some time to explain this. And so, we can still say there was a one that says Narayan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but then in that same purport, it says Narayan is an expansion of Krishna. So what? How do we get there? So, there's the evidence that we find in the Bhagavatam is that Lord Krishna is, will sometimes switch to his Narayan form. And I had it pulled up and I'm not sure what happened to the page, but Lord Krishna, when he's with the gopis, he changes to his four-armed Narayan form. Now, how Krishna changes to his four-armed Narayan form. So how does he do that? Right. So Krishna has these different expansions, these different abilities to appear from the four-armed form, which we know from Bhagavad Gita, right? These are different expansions. These are different portions of Krishna. He can appear to us as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? He can appear to us as Narayan. Narayan is Paramatma. Narayan is in our hearts. The four-armed form of Narayan is what we have in Super Soul, Paramatma. And then we have Krishna. We have the effulgence, the universal form, right? So it's actually when you kind of break it down that way, it becomes a little more clear. So Krishna has these different aspects. It doesn't mean that it's the Achinta Beta Tattva. It's the simultaneously one and the same, simultaneously one and different, right? That means that he can be Supreme Personality of Godhead in all these different forms. He can be Supreme Personality of Godhead in his two-armed personal form. He's Supreme Personality of Godhead in his four-armed Narayan form. He's Supreme Personality of Godhead in his universal form, right? So we can accept that because we know that these are the aspects of Krishna. It's the effulgence, the super soul, and the personality. It's the personal features of the Lord. So now getting back to this translation and this discussion for today, you can see that Suta Goswami is here trying to be very careful in how he explains all of this, because it is, he wants to make sure that there is no confusion. He really wants to make sure there's no confusion. And so this is where it says he has apprehension. The Bhagavatam describes the symptoms and deeds of the incarnations in general and counts Sri Krishna among them, right? So this is where, and it says, this made Suta Goswami greatly apprehensive. So why would he be apprehensive? I don't know, right? It doesn't say why he's apprehensive, but it says he's apprehensive. And the verse prior says that it's all of these incarnations, including Krishna. So are we to understand Krishna as an incarnation? No, what Suta Goswami then goes on to clarify for us is that all incarnations of Godhead are plenary portions or parts of the plenary portions of the Purusha avatar. But the primeval Lord is Sri Krishna. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the fountainhead of all creation, of incarnations. So here with this apprehension, it is the clarification to make it very clear that Krishna is the fountainhead, right? What does the fountainhead do, right? If you look at a fountain and you think about it, the fountainhead has the water coming out, but then what does the water do? It spurts out in different directions, right? It's not just one stream of water that just comes up and then stops. It comes up and then shoots off in different directions. So the fountainhead really means that Krishna is the center of it. And from him, all of these expansions can exist. And so So when we understand, like I said, if we can understand Krishna in terms of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the personal form that we have learned about him and come to know and love Krishna as, as Govinda, Krishna the cowherd boy, Krishna on the battle of Kurukshetra. This is the person, this is the personality of Krishna, the two-armed form. But then the four-armed form, Narayan, like I said, is in our hearts. But this is still all the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And from that, the expansions can exist. So we know that Brahma, so Shiva, Shiva was birthed from the forehead. And there's different kind of, ways to look at this. So it says Shiva was birthed from the forehead of Brahma, or birthed from the forehead of Vishnu, birthed from the forehead, but she was birthed from the forehead and of Vishnu. And so Shiva comes as an expansion. Brahma comes as an expansion, as an incarnation. And you have so tomorrow we actually are celebrating the incarnation of Lord Varaha. And so we celebrate the incarnation of Nrsimha. We celebrate the incarnation of the Lord and Ram Nomi in Lord Ram. So these incarnations have specific purposes. And so when we talk about the predicate and the subject, right, we want to make sure that we understand that the incarnations have their purpose. So we're explaining the qualities, the subject with their qualities. And it's very important to understand that the subject, the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, have to be described. The qualities of Supreme, he's a fountainhead of all other creation, of all incarnations. So we have to take that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and understand the qualities of him, because that will give us an understanding, of what his role is, and give us the proper understanding of all of the other incarnations that exist out there. And so, Prabhupada, like I said, in this last purport that I read in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada really tries to drive that home, that these are, Vedic literature agrees that Krishna is the source of Brahma and Shiva and all other demigods. And that's the Vedas agree. And he quotes the Narayana Upanishad. He quotes the Maha Upanishad. He quotes the Gopala Tapani Upanishad. So these are, Prabhupada isn't just being, he's not just being sentimental. He's not just pulling things out of the air. He's not just saying, I'm going to just only keep a narrow vision of only just this one scripture, because if there's any conflict, I don't want to see it. I just want to focus on this one. No, he's saying, no, it's agreed upon. He's giving us evidence, which for me, it gives more than just confidence. It gives me faith in the process. It gives me faith in the scripture and in the lineage and the parampara and in the order, the natural order of things, right? Because it's being confirmed in so many different ways. And how often can that be done, right? It's not too often in that you can really be able to confirm things. Science, when you think about science and scientific study, right? You have a theory, a hypothesis. You want to test the said hypothesis. And there are very few scientific laws out there, like very few scientific laws. Why? Because there's not enough proof. They haven't been able to actually truly prove something through all of the different studies to truly prove it. So they remain a theory. It remains a hypothesis. So, but yeah, these studies are being done because they're drawing from different studies to try and create this, create this understanding of a situation. But that's material. And we still can't get it together, right? We still can't prove a lot of the things that we try to prove and understand scientifically. Even in my field of like medicine and nutrition, there's studies that come out week after week that just completely conflict each other. And they're from reliable sources, supposedly, but it was like, how was the study conducted? Were there biases? Was it a double blind? Was it, was it some sort of placebo? Like, how are they conducting these scientific studies? And so you have to really kind of dive into it and say, like, what's the reference here? Who's the source of the study? Kind of get to the bottom of it. And then you can draw from all of these studies and kind of come to a conclusion. But Prabhupada saves us from that torment. Some people might be really into it and still, do that. But Prabhupada really saves us from that very slippery slope. It's more than torment. It's a slippery slope because, it takes a very skilled and tuned eye and a deep spiritual connection that Prabhupada has to be able to see what belongs and what doesn't. And so this is where he's saying, in the purport from the Bhagavad Gita, he's saying only hear this from authoritative sources. If you're not reading the Bhagavad Gita from a proper source, just like if you're reading studies that sugar's great for you, but there's plenty of other very concrete research out there saying that sugar can be bad for your health. And there's a couple studies that come out saying sugar's great for you because people want to eat more sugar. So they want to support the sugar industry, right? And so then you're going to be like, oh, the study came out that says sugar is great for me and I like sugar, and, or maybe I'm an executive for a sugar company and I want to support this. And we have to be careful. We have to be careful about where we're referencing things from. And so, like I said, Prabhupada gives us a lot, an abundance of references for us so that we can track it back if we want to and say, oh, okay, maybe I will, just out of curiosity's sake, because Prabhupada references, I'm curious, like I want to see what else is in this Maha Upanishad. I'm curious about the Narayana Upanishad, but Prabhupada gives us these references. He's not just making it up, and in Sutta Goswami is trying very hard to create this proof as well, the system that's coming through. He's bringing this knowledge forward for us so that we can also understand God and understand the natural order of things in the spiritual world and creation. So I really, like I said, those were some of the key points that I wanted to hit on today. Of course, going into the different incarnations is something that will be done here, and also, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and also, we'll be spending time in Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam goes through the different incarnations, not all of them, but a lot of them, some of the key ones that we'll be studying through the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. But, here in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's providing an overview, but it's really the depth of what are the true teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And we see him as an authority because we know we have the evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam, we have the evidence from other scripture that Sri Chaitanya is in fact an incarnation of God. And so this is how we work through this and study, and like I said, continue to have faith in the process, but also be wise about it too. And so, Sutta Goswami gives us kind of the language to say, like, wait, no. No, Sutta Goswami is saying, like, this is your interpretation. So he's saying in response to the opponent, he said, Krishna incarnates as Narayana incarnates as Lord Krishna. This is the meaning of where I see there's no further consideration. This is what this opponent will say. But we should reply, why should you suggest such fallacious logic? So here's, like I said, Sutta Goswami is giving us responses to illogical conclusions, because these conclusions are not supported in scripture. And if they can't be supported in scripture, then what else do we have to go on? Right? Someone's idea, someone's concoction, someone's feeling, that's fine. But it's the scripture that we're basing it on. That's our path, is we're a shastrically oriented tradition. And that's for good reason. It's for good reason. So I know that we have some time constraints here, myself included. So I'll take a pause here and just maybe invite some questions or discussion. We have a smaller class today, so if we end a little early, that's also fine. Any comments?
Thank you so much, Mataji, for covering these important verses. I think, like you were explaining, it's so much confusion out there. No matter if you're from Hindu background or non-Hindu background. So I will request devotees, if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to unmute yourself. You can also put your questions or comments on the chat box. And maybe we can spend a few minutes to clarify any questions there.
Thank you so much for a wonderful class, Vrindavanshi. I just wanted to take 1 minute before I hit the road to drop my other kid. But I was really reflecting on this topic. Again, like I said, I had to ask Parikshit, this whole predicate and subject, going back to grammar school and high school. But then it made me realize how important the subject is, the weight that it carries. Like sometimes we hear devotees say, do da 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 da. We're like, but who said that? Which goes back to the subject, right? Because I really feel that this is such an important verse, because we say so and so and so and so, but okay, where's the source coming from? And so here I feel, but from my limited understanding, how much weight the subject carries, how much importance the subject is, and how much the subject supports the predicate. Like in fact, like when me and my husband were talking just now, he gave me an example. The boy is going to school, but who's going to school?
Right. Yeah.
So I was thinking that even in Krishna consciousness, when we give certain instructions or we share certain feedback or we add or we analyze or we add more examples, we have to know where it's coming from, the source, which is the subject, and how much the subject plays such an important part in the predicate, as opposed to just saying the predicate without the subject. So that was just coming to my mind, Yeah. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, it's really, it's an excellent point. So that, we need to understand the subject and exactly what Anasuya Prabhu was saying, that if we don't know where it's coming from, the statement of the source, and that's definitely another way to look at that too, is we need to understand the source of everything. And that's why I was saying it's so important that we, we really take to the authority and understand, well, Prabhupada's drawing this information from various places that are all concluding the same thing. And so, but this, and the subject is these different expansions. And if we know that these different expansions and their features and their qualities, and also not just the expansions, but who's discussing these expansions. Sutta Goswami, he's an authority to us. He's a great authority on this. And so we trust that he's giving us this information. But the subject is really, you can't just start discussing something without really a topic without understanding the subject. If you just start going into describing something without someone knowing what you're describing, you could say it's blue, it's very pretty, it's tall, la la la, and then you're like, he's blue, he's very beautifully decorated, he's this, he's that, he's wonderful, he does tremendous feats, but you need to be able to say Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who has these qualities, or else it doesn't have any meaning to it, because Krishna as the subject is God, and therefore it completely changes that description, doesn't it? Now, when we know that this is what we're talking about Krishna. Oh, okay, right. We can't just assign these things to anybody. We can't just assign these qualities to anybody. They have, if they're assigned to Krishna, then we can have a better understanding of them. So that's wonderful. Thank you. Any other thoughts, dear Krishna Prabhu? Any other
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure. I don't see any more questions or comments, but I do have one. Maybe you can just let me know if what I'm thinking is right or
I'll
in the right context.
try.
So in this particular section, like you mentioned, how the different plenary portions and expansions of Vishnu or Krishna are mentioned. So there is so much really confusion, even in devotees. Sometimes we end up making such comments or explanations which is really not based on the scriptures. So it's very challenging sometimes. But if we carefully study Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and of course Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has really put an end to all the speculations. He, like in Bhagavatam, Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam, Srila Vedvyas mentions. So there is really no need for speculation if we really carefully read and understand, especially Srimad Bhagavatam. All the expansions, all the demigods and the goddesses, there is no need for really any mix up there. So that's what I'm thinking. Maybe you can clarify or add more to it.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's we already understand Krishna to be Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so because he is, like I said, the fountainhead, we know that he's the fountainhead of all of the expansions and incarnations. So, and the Vishnu Tattva can be very confusing for people too. So you have, the Govardhakashayi Vishnus and the Sheshasayi Vishnu. So you have these different expansions of Vishnu, which is confusing. And then you have the expansions of Lord Balaram, Sankarshan, you have all the Sankarshan expansions. So it's, you need a roadmap to follow it. But what we really need to understand truly is that Krishna is the fountainhead. Lord Krishna is the fountainhead, and Krishna has different expressions. Like I said, he has the personal form of the two-arm form, the four-arm form in Narayan, and then the universal form. But beyond, and then beyond that, that's the Krishna, kind of Krishna in his different forms, right? Which we've already learned about in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna has different forms, right? That are non-different from him. But then from that, the expansions of all the others can evolve, can occur. And so if we just look at and just remember that who's the CEO at the top, everyone else is underneath, right? That's all we really need to remember, is everyone else is underneath Krishna in the chain of command. And it's repeated over and over and over. And different names may be used. Krishna is interchanged for Vishnu. Narayan is interchanged for Krishna. Narayan's interchanged for Vishnu. So, but just if you look at the kind of what Narayan is, the name of Narayan is the four-armed Paramatma form, right? So to not be confused, right? And this is where the different names can be confusing sometimes. But as devotees, it's important to remember is that Krishna is at the top. And that's the focus. And there's in our path, there are a lot of names. There's no question, but just keep your compass on K for Krishna. You'll be fine.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the scripture that is accepted by all the authorities from all the Vaishnava paramparas. So it's not just us who are following it. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Absolutely.
And I don't see any hand raised or any comment yet. So if no comments, no questions, I can think.
Yeah.
I think we can let you go also. I know you have to rush for work also.
Yes, and you too, Prabhu. So thank you for hosting and taking over.
Thank you so much for enlightening us today with this call. And thank you all the devotees. Happy Ekadashi again. And we will see you all tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.